Hey guys, Ponce here, and today I'm going to talk to you about Teemo decks, but not really Teemo decks. Because the concept I actually want to get at is the concept of consistency. Now, from the title and thumbnail and whatnot, you may gather that I don't actually really like Teemo decks. Personally, I have nothing against people playing them, I suppose. People play the game how they want. But I've seen a number of people in the past, certainly less so recently, just sort of swear by the efficacy of Teemo decks. And certainly they can work, but that can be said about most decks that aren't just completely ridiculous. It certainly is an archetype that can work, and in fact can win against very good decks. The problem is the aforementioned consistency. The only time I've ever really seen Teemo decks win is when essentially they get kind of a perfect curve, like the dream scenario of the Teemo deck, where you start with Teemo in hand, the other person doesn't have an immediate response, you get out a couple quick mushrooms, he transforms, you double them, and basically you spam the person down with mushrooms and set up something of an adequate defense, and they tend to crumble, usually aided by the fact that the opponent does not have any kind of response because they drew very poorly. The problem with that is any deck can do that. Any deck, when faced with essentially its dream curve scenario and gets its shit going, is going to beat out another deck, no matter how good it is, if they get poor draws and are unable to respond correctly. I mean, it's the nature of these card games. I'm thinking back to, the previous beta, like when everyone had like every card that they could possibly use. I don't think I ever saw a Teemo deck win a single time. Even when I was getting mediocre draws with my decks that I could build with any card I wanted, and Teemo decks being built with any card that they wanted, they would get the perfect start. I would get a mediocre start. I suppose I never started with the worst possible start, where your opening hand is all 7 mana cards, you don't do anything for, 5 turns or whatever. Granted, nothing that dire, but that's an irrelevant extreme. I would still manage to come back, and I don't think I ever lost him a single time. The only time I've seen Teemo decks actually win is in more recent times when no one really has any cards to work with, and then that gets coupled with I can't do anything for 5 turns, and Teemo shows up turn 1 and just keeps doing Teemo things. I suppose the issue with the Teemo decks, they're probably further compounded because they tended to get shut down even in the past, and especially now, when anyone had any kind of either elusive, anti-elusive built-in mechanics or were elusive decks themselves, which we're seeing a lot of. Pretty much if you go into ranked, a huge chunk of the decks are just the typical, just elusive net deck copy-paste spam. A lot of hand decks that, are buffing out a hand, and there's big elusive units on the floor, and Teemo's worthless. So, not a fan. As I said, they can be effective, but it's just even more cut down by the meta, if you will, with everyone playing so many elusive decks. Now, there may be a way to get the Teemo deck to work. If someone did something particularly creative that I haven't thought of, granted, I haven't put a lot of thought in how am I going to make a Teemo deck particularly good. It seems like that's way too much of a mental investment in something that's probably not going to be all that good to begin with, whereas I could be thinking of some other way of doing something effective in this game. Time is money after all. It doesn't seem like a particularly effective avenue. There may be a way. I'd like for someone to basically highlight something, but breaking away from the typical Teemo deck mold I see, where people get so hyper-focused on, I gotta kill the person with mushrooms, I need to have Teemo out in the opening hand kind of way. If there was some way to diversify that win condition, I could see maybe it might be okay. Even though, again, the huge issue with Teemo as a unit is it's so feeble and will just simply get blown up by any kind of other elusive unit. Because winning through just mushrooms alone or mushroom-related strategies, again, it's really pigeonholing you. The effective decks I see tend to have multiple win conditions. There might be similar avenues to winning. For example, if you're playing, again, let's just say an elusive deck because it's easy. There's multiple elusive units that will get you the win, or multiple buff combinations on a specific elusive unit that will tend to kill. For example, I'm not saying my deck's super awesome or something, but let's, I don't know, go over here for a second. My Ghost Ephemeral deck, again, not that this is the most efficient thing in the universe. This is more a fun deck while being relatively efficient. Has multiple roads to victory. You know, I can kill you by just running you down with a Z. I could do a whole bunch of very early Cursed Keepers, just kind of spam you down. Ephemeral might overrun you. I could pump a whole bunch of specific buffs onto a specific unit. I can Deathmark swap. You know, Rasa can show up. Hecarim can show up. Ethereal Remitter might do something useful. Like, there's a bunch of ways of doing stuff. Whereas a lot of the time, again, where I'm seeing Teemo decks, let's just go to mushrooms here, it's just 90% of stuff I own. I'm trying to get the mushrooms on the person, which, you know, perhaps is a flaw in the strategy and shouldn't be held too much to the Teemo archetype, but I don't really see too much else they can do. Granted, I'm just showing mushroom cards here. I know there's more ways of getting mushrooms out. There's a bunch of different spell combos, and you do weird things, and then there's that other guy that, like, creates mushrooms. Like the Mushroom Peddler, or whatever the hell his name is. But in any case, yeah, so if anyone has any ways to theoretically, I suppose, make the Teemo deck consistent and provide alternative avenues to victory that are more, that aren't less efficient, I suppose, than the mushroom way of doing things. And sort of mushrooms are an actual inclusive part of the whole strategy and it sort of makes sense of everything. I'd be open to just seeing that. But as it stands, I don't really see it. I think a lot of the draw-in is that with these Teemo decks is people build the Teemo decks and they're just so excited of the concept of killing people with mushrooms because it's somewhat novel that they either recognize the deck is in fact somewhat crappy, or they sort of delude themselves because when it actually does work, it's probably a bit of a high. It's like, oh, I did the mushroom thing, I'm so troll and hilarious and blah blah blah. And you know, they forget the 10 other times when they didn't have Teemo in the opening hand and they just got run over, or when Teemo was blocked by you know, a pathetic little 3/2 ephemeral unit or something like that and couldn't do anything. So anyway, I hope that gets across the notion of consistency, where generally speaking, what you're looking for in a deck is consistency. It's going to win, you know, 7, maybe 8 times out of 10, as opposed to winning once or twice out of 10 in an absolutely spectacular and hilarious fashion. Granted, if that's what you're looking for, go for it. But yeah, you know, that's a valid playstyle. If that's what you want to do with your time, that's the way how you want to play the game, go for it. I'm not going to say stop, you know, stop doing that. It's, you know, your free time. But if you're looking for something effective and consistent, this champion may not be the way to go. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching. And I'm probably off to go stream. I pre-record these, but I tend to send them live right before I go streaming. So if you ever catch one of my TFT video, Legends of Runeterra videos, it probably means I am live over on twitch.tv/pods, #ad. Just gonna slip that in there in the end. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.